Well, welcome to the 700 Club. The president still has several paths to victory, according to constitutional lawyer Alan Dershowitz. This comes after setbacks over the weekend of the president's legal efforts. The question remains, what evidence does the Team Trump need to prove fraud? Now, there's something that you need to know about that's called smart, well, what do they call well, that's the name of the company.
Oh.
And it's a subsidiary. It's what? Smartmatics. And it's the legal arm of this other company that has been doing the work, this Dominion. Mm-hmm. And they have a sworn testimony of an employee of Dominion who saw people changing thousands of ballots in a particular race. They've seen it. It's a sworn affidavit under penalty of perjury. And this Smartmatics is the agency that on its website, which has now been taken down, on its website, said we can fix elections so we can guarantee your candidate will win. Now, I'm lucky that Evo Morales down in Bolivia, who was the darling of the coca growers, has resigned, and now, quote, Bolivia is going socialist. And I wonder if they are using Smartmatics. Yeah, we'll have to find out. But the thing that says that there's no evidence, I mean, listen, one thing is the evidence to win a case. Something else is this evidence of it happening. We're not talking about proving a case. We're talking about evidence. Well, let's see about what Dale Hurd has to tell us about that.
A high-ranking source close to the Trump legal team tells CBN News that attorney Sidney Powell no longer has a role because her claims went beyond evidence that the legal team had either seen or could prove in court.
Powell repeatedly has said that she has the evidence to overturn the presidential election results.
First of all, I never say anything I can't prove. And President Trump won by not just hundreds of thousands of votes, but by millions of votes that were shifted by this software that was designed expressly for that purpose. We have sworn witness testimony of why the software was designed. It was designed to rig elections.
But a senior administration official told the Washington Examiner, quote, Sidney has made these claims, but she has not shown, to my knowledge, evidence to support them, not to the campaign and not to the White House. In an email to the Wall Street Journal, Powell said, quote, I agree with the statement today. I will represent #WeThePeople and seek the truth. I intend to expose all the fraud and let the chips fall where they may. We will not allow the foundations of this great republic to be destroyed by abject fraud. The president's legal team suffering a legal setback Saturday when a federal judge ruled against their suit in Pennsylvania. They're appealing to circuit court. Constitutional scholar and attorney Alan Dershowitz says the president still has several constitutional paths to victory.
For example, in Pennsylvania, they have two very strong legal arguments. One, that the courts changed what the legislature did about counting ballots after the end of Election Day. That's a winning issue in the Supreme Court. I don't necessarily support it, but it's a winning issue in the Supreme Court. And Justice Alito has already hinted that's a winning issue. They also have a winning issue in the Supreme Court on equal protection, that some counties allowed flawed ballots to be cured while others didn't.
Meanwhile, Michigan is preparing a vote on whether to certify election results or delay the process to allow an audit. With at least one Republican member of the state's canvassing board expected to delay the certification, if the other Republican forces a tie, the issue could end up in court. Michigan's House Speaker told Fox News,
if there were to be a 2-2 split on the State Board of Canvassers, it would then go to the Michigan Supreme Court to determine what their response would be, what their order would be.
The Trump campaign also requesting another recount in Georgia.
The biggest challenge in contesting this election is time, and it's running out. The Electoral College is set to vote on December 14th, just 3 weeks away. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Well, as they say, it's not over till the fat lady sings, and I don't think that song has come out yet. I think the Trump team has quite a few avenues, and when you think that Supreme Court Judge Alito, said certain ballots have got to be isolated until after the count to make sure that then they need to be litigated, that hasn't been done. In Georgia, there's a ruling that says the Secretary of State was not able on his own to change the way that the election was to be conducted. It should be under the legislature. That's another challenge. And it just is amazing. But the thing that, you know, I look back to the Nazis, the man who was in charge of the propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, and he said, if you tell a lie often enough, people will begin to believe it. And I believe the fact that we keep calling Joe Biden the president-elect, he is not elected until the electors decide, and that hasn't happened yet. Yet we call him the president-elect. He's already choosing his cabinet. He's talking about cabinet positions. He's asking for money to run his transition team, and we keep calling him president-elect. He is not the president-elect. He is Joe Biden, citizen, until such time as his election is certified. It hasn't happened yet. Remember that. Well, in other news, expensive, intrusive, and scary. That sums up the impacts of the Democrats' wish list under a potential Biden administration. Just how far left would Biden himself go? George Thomas has more.
Thank you, Pat. Hello, everyone. Joe Biden is expected to begin naming cabinet secretaries on Tuesday. Word is out that he'll nominate Antony Blinken as Secretary of State. Blinken served as Deputy Secretary of State under President Obama. Some say if Biden takes office, his administration could be more radical than Obama's. Dale Hood has the story.
The so-called progressive wing of the Democratic Party hopes a possible Biden administration delivers. Even Bernie Sanders, who as a young socialist honeymooned in the Soviet Union, says he expects to be happy with a Biden administration's progressive agenda.
I fully expect that the Biden administration will be advocating those proposals that they agreed to.
And that should make conservatives concerned.
Conservatives will find the wish list for the Democrats' agenda to be expensive, intrusive, and scary.
Terry Jeffrey, editor-in-chief at CNSnews.com, has studied Joe Biden's campaign promises.
He is proposing really to be a radical president. He's going to be far left. He's not a moderate in terms of the policy promises he has made.
As president, Biden has said he wants to turn the Roe v. Wade abortion decision into federal law and make it part of taxpayer-funded health care. He's promised to order insurance companies to cover sex change operations.
He's going to issue an order, he says, on his first day in office that forces all public colleges and public schools to recognize the quote-unquote gender of a person's choice, of a student's choice, and then let them play on the sports teams, use the locker rooms, use the restrooms of the sex they claim to be, not the sex that they are anatomically or biologically.
Biden wants to prohibit anyone convicted of a misdemeanor hate crime from owning a firearm. A misdemeanor hate crime in some states can simply be advocating too strongly against the gay agenda. Biden's transition team leader for media, Richard Stengel, has said he wants to redefine freedom of speech and wrote in the Washington Post that he thinks hate speech should be made a crime. His possible choice for press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, has been described by the Jewish Voice as an anti-Israel radical. The election results are still being disputed, and Biden may not get much of anything through Congress, but he could still do a lot through executive orders.
I think that Vice President Biden campaigned on an incredibly progressive and aggressive agenda. He's going to make good on those commitments.
Conservatives who voted for Joe Biden because they didn't like Donald Trump could be very surprised by the far-left agenda they helped install in the White House. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Dale, Pat, back to you.
The question is that I'm talking to the Lord and reminding the Lord as if he needs reminding of how the importance of America is in the world We're the only bastion of freedom, any nation strong enough. And what will happen if we corrode our values? We're supposed to be a city, a shining city on a hill and all the rest of it. What will we do? Well, this was a choice, and there was a choice. And I think people made the choice at the polls, and now we're going to determine whether or not that choice was actually stolen away from them by this Dominion software and their allied plans. But it's shocking, and if I were you, I would pray as hard as I could, because the freedom you have enjoyed in this nation is going to be taken away from you in a matter of a few weeks, unless God himself intervenes. And so I'm doing a lot of praying, and I hope you are too. George?
Pat, one other aspect on the political campaign. Joe Biden plans to campaign in Georgia for 2 Democrat Senate candidates. His chief of staff said staffers from the presidential campaign are already on the ground there helping candidates Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. And he expects Biden will make a trip down there before Election Day. Warnock's Republican rival, Kelly Loeffler, is in self-quarantine after getting conflicting reports on COVID-19 tests. The race, by the way, between Warnock and Loeffler has been heating up. The fuel, a nearly decade-old sermon by Warnock saying America needs to choose between serving God and serving the military. CBN National Security Correspondent Eric Phillips explains.
The runoff election between Democrat Reverend Raphael Warnock and Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler will factor greatly in determining the balance of power in the Senate. It's why everything is on the line right now, including a sermon Reverend Warnock preached 9 years ago. This is the part of the 2011 sermon creating ire on the right.
America, nobody can serve God and the military. You can't serve God and money. You cannot serve God and mammon at the same time. America, choose ye this day whom you will serve.
The words prompting harsh rebuke from Warnock's Republican opponent, Kelly Loeffler, who tweeted, "Reverend Warnock, you owe every active duty military service member and veteran an apology. Shameful." RNC spokesperson Liz Harrington called the sermon insulting.
In fact, this nation was founded on brave men and women willing to enter into the fray and fight for our freedoms and sacrifice so much.
I think it's unfortunate and shameful that they are trying to distort not only my message, but the message of Scripture.
Warnock defended his words during this virtual press conference.
What I was expressing was the fact that as a person of faith, my ultimate allegiance is to God. And therefore, whatever else that I may commit myself to, it has to be built on a spiritual foundation. It is a spiritual lesson that is basic and foundational for people of faith.
More criticism came the same week after this tweet from Reverend Warnock, which said, "I will always fight for reproductive justice." Former NFL player and devout pro-life Christian Benjamin Watson clapped back, "Pastor, equal access to kill a son or daughter is not justice."
I think these statements are a pattern by Mr. Warnock that shows very outside of the mainstream views that he holds, that I think are too extreme and too radical for Georgia, but too radical for the majority of Americans as well.
Warnock explained during the press conference that he has many veterans in his congregation who heard that sermon back in 2011, and they weren't confused about the message. He also said previously that the right to choose, or reproductive justice as he calls it, is a part of health care, which he says is a human right. He says government should not interfere with that decision-making process, and he says that is consistent with his view as a Christian minister. Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Thank you, Eric. As coronavirus cases continue to climb nationwide, more good news on the vaccine front. A third vaccine is showing promising results. AstraZeneca reporting that late-stage trial shows its vaccine is up to 90% effective. This after Pfizer and Moderna reported their vaccines are nearly 95% effective. Pfizer has already applied for emergency authorization from the FDA. The hearing is set for December 10th. The official in charge of Operation Warp Speed says vaccines are ready to ship within 24 hours of approval, meaning some Americans could begin receiving their first doses in mid-September. Heading overseas to the Middle East. Israeli media reporting Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Mossad chief Yossi Cohen flew to Saudi Arabia Sunday to meet Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. A tracking site showed a flight Sunday evening from Tel Aviv to Nome, that's Saudi Arabia's planned city of the future, where the Crown Prince was meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Many expect Saudi Arabia to be one of the next countries to normalize relations with Israel as part of the Abraham Accords. Pat, if that happens, that would be very, very significant.
It's absolutely huge, but I knew it was going to happen. They are part of the coalition that will be on the side of Israel when you have that Gog and Magog thing, and led by Turkey and the radical Muslim states that'll come again, and Iran, I might add, and Kush, which is North Sudan. They'll all be there together. And the others would be out of the loop. And so I knew that the Saudis would normalize, and it's a major, major thing. You first have the Emirates, then you have Qatar, and then you have Dubai, and now you're going to have Saudi Arabia. It'll be a marvelous thing for peace in the Middle East. But that will happen. It's supposed to be. It'll be part of prophecy, so keep your eyes on it.